Hi, I'm Samantha Murray,
Hi, I'm Courtney Sembler.
and this is CX Signals.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CX Signals. Courtney and I are so excited for today's episode because our guest is genuinely one of those people who just gets it. And I think you're going to feel that the moment she starts talking. Danielle Evans is the Director of Customer Education at Sendoso, the leading corporate gifting and direct mail platform. And what makes her special isn't just what she's built, it's how she thinks. She came up through customer success, found her way into customer ed the way so many of us do, and has since built one of the most creative, outcome-driven programs I've come across. In this conversation, we get into how she's expanding her remit to own internal go-to-market enablement, AI-powered voice of customer workflows that are actually practical, and how she ran a coffee-themed gifting campaign that drove more certifications in a single month than they'd hit the entire year prior. But the part that really got me was when she shared that after 2 years of tracking, they could finally prove that accounts with a certified admin spend more than accounts without one. That's the moment every CE leader is chasing, and she walks us through exactly how she got there. It's strategic, it's real, and it's a really fun conversation. Let's get into it.
Danielle, welcome to CX Signals. We are so excited to have you. I wanted to share that I had such a great time getting to know you when we first met. I really appreciated you reaching out. So for context for our listeners, Danielle reached out to me when I put out a call for some support on LinkedIn. I was working on a project with a client and was doing some research on RFPs and vendor evaluations, and you reached out to me and offered some help. And I learned so much during that conversation. Despite having done vendor evaluations before, I truly learned so much throughout the conversation. And I thought, well, she has to just come on the podcast. She has to be one of our first guests.
I love that. That was such a great conversation. And honestly, that was one of my first times being a little bit more vocal and forward on LinkedIn. I think I was almost a little shy, right? Like, is what I have to offer worthwhile? Is it going to actually be helpful? And when I, offered to help, I was like, you know what? That's just like true to my nature is I want to be helpful to people. It's like, you know what? Maybe Sam does want some help and I can give her that. And it was really, the conversation gave me so much confidence.
Amazing. I'm so glad to hear that because it was tremendously valuable for me. And the project that I was working on is about to be released in the next, I think, week or two. So I will let everyone know when that's live. I'm very excited for that to be published. I thought we'd kick it off with maybe a bit of background context on yourself for anyone who does not know you. So if you don't mind sharing, how did you land in customer education? What was your career journey like? Just give us a bit of background context.
Yeah, lovely. So I actually started in customer success. So I was, working with a mid-market book of business. I was going on site to do QBRs, but also when I was there, I had coordinated with my points of contact to do training sessions for their various teams. So little did I know, I was actually doing customer education as a CSM, delivering these live sessions, follow-up materials, resources, really coaching teams on how to use our product. And from there, just kind of grew into an enterprise book where I could do even more training. And I found that a lot of the resources and things that I was creating, other CSMs were interested in taking and kind of repurposing for their own customers. And it's like, wow, what a cool impact I could have if I could do this for the entire company's book of business and not just my own. So when I realized that that's an actual team, right? Customer education, training, it goes by lots of different names, but that scaled approach to getting customers what they need and educating them and helping them be successful on the product really fired me up. And that kind of propelled my trajectory into customer education. And the timing worked out really well. I actually had my second child and I got rid of my book of business. All my accounts were transferred. And then when I came back, that's when I jumped into the training role full time. So it was a really, life-wise, a really nice transitional moment for me. And then I could spend more time at home and not be on the road back in the day when we would go see customers monthly and just be out all the time.
That your journey is so familiar to both Courtney and I because we both come from CSM support rep roles prior to getting into customer education.
I mean, I think that speaks a lot to when you understand the customer so well, when you've had that conversation with them, you see the struggle that they go through and, you do it back to back. So you talk to the one customer, the next call, you text them and you're like, oh, I'm having the same conversation. I'm having the same discussions and training and all of that day in and day out. And at least what I found, that like desire in me to like, no, like I can't scale myself. I cannot take, 100, 150 calls every single day. And like those customers need more help than the 30-minute call they're going to have with me once a quarter. Like they need more support than that. And I feel like your journey is also now expanded in your current situation. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're owning, what you're overseeing, customer education, enablement, walk us through where you're at right now?
I'm so excited. It's such an opportunity to educate even more groups and cohorts and people, which I love. So established customer education and, I'm at Sendoso. We're really fun industry, right? Corporate gifting, direct mail. It's a really fun space. So we focused on educating those customers first and building out like our content libraries and our programs. And I think all of the work and the foundational pieces we've put into place have really opened up the opportunity for me personally to take on additional education opportunities. So not just customers, but now we're looking at go-to-market teams. So BDRs and sales and marketing, but also post-sales. So we've got CX and support and all of these other groups that want to be enabled on how to speak about our product, but also how to help our customers and prospects strategically along that journey. So I'm really excited that we are bringing on a new role, a GTM enablement manager, still in the interview process, but lots of really big plans on helping our own internal teams and kind of repurposing a lot of that content that we have for customers. I think every piece that we have is still relevant for employees to know about, with just that little, messaging and positioning piece on top and maybe some more hands-on practice. But all of that is super relevant. So we've built this great foundation of content, and now we can repurpose it for different learners and different perspectives. So that's really, really exciting for the next year for me.
It's so interesting to hear you share about this because I think there's different pathways that customer education leaders can take when it comes to growing their career. One of those pathways is the one that you're taking, which is consolidating different learning teams under the umbrella of one leader, right? And then there's another pathway that we're seeing, which is the taking on of community, customer marketing, advocacy, knowledge base, etc. Can you talk us through what it was like? Like, did leadership come to you with this suggestion, or did you try to champion this change? What inspired the change within your organization?
Sure. So we haven't had a dedicated enablement person for 2 years now. And within that time, we obviously noticed there were things that still needed to be enabled, right? Different teams needed to have this information. I'm specifically thinking around like product launches and things like that. So I volunteered to help be this kind of cross-functional team, right? Not our day job, something extra, but everyone kind of pulled together and we got our internal content squared away and that platform. And we did a little bit of certification and enablement and training, but because it was no one's full-time job, there weren't a lot of going a step further, right? Like the strategy piece of it was missing, the metrics and the reporting up to department managers. So there was still a lot of opportunity. And our CEO actually championed this project. And I was being part of this kind of working group. I was like, you know what? Let's just come up, like, if I could own this, what would I make the strategy? How would I set the stage? How would I choose to tackle this challenge, this opportunity? So I put a whole strategy doc together and shared. And then he's like, oh, well, what about a job description? Would you like to put a job description together? Sure. Of course. Happy to. So it all kind of evolved out of this, again, a desire to help. And seeing a need, seeing something that's a very tangible business need and trying to help fill that. And now I have the opportunity to bring that person on and actually build out this fantastic enablement structure at Sendoso.
What I love about that story is that like initial nugget of like saying yes, being willing to help. Like there's so much of that energy still in organizations where it's like, well, it's not my job. It's not in my job description. Like I'll wait for it to get formalized. And those are always the people who are then like annoyed is what I'll say when they like don't get the job. You're like, well, you didn't try to help when it was a problem. So why are you going to let things come to you? I mean, I'll go out there. I say it's a very female, sometimes oriented desire to like, let me get in, let me help solve this problem. But I love how you've been able to like close that gap, that circle for yourself of, hey, like I saw this. I'm going to help when it's not my full-time job, when it's not something formalized, so that I'm in the position when the CEO is like, write a job description. You're like, sounds great. It's what I'm doing already today. So let me just put that into words. And it's giving yourself that voice in the room that sometimes you're not in. And I just like, I hope you've given yourself like the hug, the high five, because it's a hard thing to do. It's hard to say, yes, I can solve this problem, and here, like, watch me solve it. Like that's the energy it feels like it comes like, watch me do it. And I love that for you.
Thank you. Of course, there's a little imposter syndrome too, right? Like this is a new area for me, but I was speaking with someone who's kind of helping guide me along this journey. And she had said, like, you've already done this. You've already done needs assessments. You've already built learning programs. You've already had, like, you know about the learner experience. You're just doing it for another audience. And that really clicked for me, like, wait a minute, I really have been doing this. And it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it just takes someone else's perspective to kind of help reshape your own thoughts on something.
Learning's learning. It's like, the foundation is there. Sam and I talk about that so much of how we can either grow careers, et cetera, and learning comes down to what are the different audiences you want to work with. The foundation is always going to be there on how you're going to serve them, what that looks like, from customer journey mapping to needs assessment. Are you internal? Are you external? Are you a partner? Are you a customer? Are you a developer? Like it's not going to matter. Like learning's gonna be there at the core.
There's something I think so incredible about bringing these teams together from a strategy perspective, because it reduces the duplication and redundancy that we often see across organizations. Danielle, you alluded to it, right? So I'm curious, like now that you have this really wide remit across multiple different audiences, how do you decide what it is that you're going to prioritize in terms of the content that you're creating? And are there already some thoughts percolating in your brain around how you're going to centralize and unify the content creation process? Like, what does that all look like?
Yeah, I love that. So we are really leaning in to AI and what we can do there from from a bandwidth perspective, right? There's a lot of very manual tasks like listening to calls, for example. That could take literally all day and you might not even get a ton of insight out of it. Big time consuming tasks like that. We're looking at utilizing the tools that we have more effectively and doing some analysis, right? I would love to interview every salesperson, every CSM, and ask them for their challenges and what they're hearing on prospect and customer calls, but I don't want to overburden those folks. I would rather look at we're recording all of our calls and I have access to that information. I'm just going to be proactive. I'm going to go and see what kind of trends we can find from across teams, right? But then I think the big part about this, AI is great, but there's a human component that's always going to be relevant. And we're going to need that human lens to really validate, all right, here's our top 10 themes that we're seeing across prospect calls, across customer calls. I want my stakeholders to stack rank those. I want to know in your mind, what is the priority? And then from there, take it back, synthesize it, right? Person who's going to be our enablement person. And then after we kind of combine all of that together, come up with our opinion and recommendation on what we should be tackling first, run that by our CEO, who is our biggest stakeholder and champion and cheerleader in this effort, make sure we're aligned. And then I want to build out an enablement calendar for the entire fiscal year. Of course, it can be flexible, right? This is lofty, but like a loose, calendar of the topics we want to cover in the order we want to cover with ideal metrics that we're going to impact. And then from there, we can look at, okay, what content do we have slated in? What content might we need to build, or hands-on programs do we need to build, and kind of go from there. So I want to repurpose as much customer content that we already have, right? And I think having this enablement person on the education team is really going to benefit that, because awareness is half the battle. Knowing all of the content that we have, or anyone has really. So I think the person's going to fit into the team so nicely. We have this great repository. We have these tools. Hopefully we'll have this great calendar, and it's all just going to come together and build the foundation for our program.
So incredible.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it, if you can't tell.
Not at all.
Well, and that brings in so much of the energy that we need to that, right? Which is, being able to serve that internal side, purpose the education you already have. I mean, I think about it even like as an individual contributor, just like the beauty of, to use the buzzwords like this synergy and like the coordination, the collaboration, just going to make everything operate a lot smoother than when we're running around and you're like, oh, I should probably get on the call with my enablement person again, who I haven't talked to in 6 months. Oh, you built the same education I did? Great. And like, then there's nothing to do about it. Like, the education is built, it's out there. And that feedback you can get from CSMs was like, well, I watched the academy thing, but it's kind of different than what I got from enablement. How do I sort of round that circle? You know what? I'm not going to like listen to either one. And you're like, literally the last thing we wanted is what's going to happen. It becomes that fatigue. You touched on it a little bit in there, but I kind of want to dig into it. That voice of the customer and how you're listening to them. So many leaders are like, yeah, I listen to the customer. Sure, I listen to recorded calls. I'm like, but do you really actually dive in and listen to the customer? And it sounds like you've operationalized that quite a bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about that workflow? You touched on it with the recorded calls, but I think our listeners really want to hear how they can take it from idea, cute thing they put on a slide, to how they can make it possible in the day-to-day.
Lovely. I have a fantastic example to share. So customer side, right? We realized that one of our goals as a company is to grow internationally. Well, do we have enough content to support this international audience and growth, and the intricacies and nuances that come with gifting internationally versus gifting domestically? So we were like, all right, we're going to meet with our head of international, who is fantastic. He's always willing to jump on a call, but we wanted to be prepared. So we decided, let's take I think we looked at the last 6 months of international calls, if I'm remembering correctly, and analyzed. And this was, again, a really cool opportunity to use that AI and ask, what are the pain points that customers are experiencing and on these calls that relate to international? And the prompt was a little bit more detailed than that, but I think listeners can tweak it to whatever suits their own businesses. But what came back was a really great list that had examples that we could reference with call links and things if we did want to listen to call snippets, and then took that and put it in. We used ChatGPT, so we put it in there. And I was like, all right, these are our customer pain points with international. Here is literally every international piece of content that we have. I linked help articles. I found even blogs and things on our corporate site. Anything that a customer might be searching out for international. We had our videos and our courses from our university. And I said, based on the customer pain points identified here, list out, here's the content that we have. Where are the gaps in our content strategy? What are we missing? What do customers need that we can better support? And it popped out a really fantastic list. It was quite long, which is a little intimidating.
Yep. Been there before, that long list.
Yeah, not mad about it. I took that list and prepared my team. And then when we went into that meeting with our head of international, he was able to read all of that and validate, which I think is the critical part here. Just like in the needs assessment, going back to stakeholders and getting them to validate. making sure like, yes, this is actually what we're hearing on calls. I think this content would be great, or maybe this would be a little bit different, but it gave us such a great starting point to have a conversation about where we can do better for our customers. And I'm sure all of that content, once it's created, will be repurposed for internal enablement as well, because it's such a big goal for our whole company. So I love this synergy, there's your buzzword, between
We love
the
it.
We should have a
customer
counter.
needs,
How many times do we
right?
use synergy in a conversation?
In mine. But yeah, just bringing it all together. I think that the customer needs assessment is going to be very relevant for employees still also. So there's always that enablement component that can be added on.
Yeah, that connection and that trust but verify. Like, this is what the data is telling us. But particularly when you go into other markets that are not your home market, whatever it may be, you have to have that leader who is like, yeah, the data says that, but we actually really need this, or we actually really need that for the customer. And that trust but verify piece is really like the marriage between those things. I'm curious, just because I love the international localization side and I'm a little bit of a geek about it. When you did that initial like assessment, like, was there something that surprised you? Because this is what I felt of, like, the either differences in content you needed or the similarities in any of the markets that you're going into.
I think there was a lot of differences, right? Customs was a really big piece that we're like, well, you don't really have that if you're sending, US to US, for example. So the customs piece was very cloudy for customers. And when they would get on calls with our CSMs, clears it up. Great. But our on-demand resources were not as clear. So I think there's some pieces there that we're taking away that are just going to help people better understand how to send internationally and how to be prepared going into that. But yeah, that was a really big one where I was like, ooh, yes, I'm so glad we partner with SMEs. I'm so glad that we have these people who are literally having these conversations every day. Let's take that information and scale it, because that is applicable across the board to all of our customers.
It's so great, I think, when you're able to actually identify some of those friction points or pain points that the customers are experiencing, and then work with your cross-functional leaders like you have with your international leader to figure out how you're going to solve those problems, because that's how you actually get to impactful business outcomes, right? It's getting everyone on the same page. It's like having visibility across these different teams on what are the challenges that we know we want to solve and how is that impacting the business? What are the KPIs that we're all going to rally around to try to address? And what are the leading indicators that we're actually going to measure to see if what we're doing is working? So in that example that you shared, I'm curious, what was the post impact of that work? Were you able to prove that there was an impact directly on the business?
Well, we're actually building that content right now.
Got it.
That was a super fresh example. But yeah, it led us to understand the need for more coursework and things that people could do on demand, because they were reaching out. And that's something that I'm going to be looking at is, are we seeing the call volume for repetitive things decrease? So
Love it.
planning is there.
Love it.
We're still working on rolling out the content, but I have to imagine that that is going to be the outcome that we experience. More strategic calls versus the repetitive things that could be answered. And I do think that in today's world, people expect a certain level of digital resources. They expect that kind of foundational tooling that they can go to, either a help center or a university or a really robust corporate website. But people want to be able to find things on their own more and more. I think having that built out is really going to be even more of a priority than it was before.
For sure. Courtney is a big nerd about localization and translation. I'm a big nerd about VOC. That's one thing that I've always been incredibly nerdy about. One of the things that I did on my team at Docebo was implement an actual voice of customer team who was responsible for consolidating all of the different points of data that we had across product telemetry, our customer advisory boards, stuff that was coming in from support tickets, the CSMs, like you name it, basically created this massive dashboard to pull all of this data in to gain visibility into across all of these different touch points that our customers are having with the brand. Where are the biggest challenges? And then we took it one step further and actually did some customer journey mapping and service design blueprinting workshops to validate some of those pain points, and then did that directly with some of our customers to try to to, again, further validate beyond just our organization. Are these real challenges for you? And let's dig into what's kind of the expectation that you have when it comes to us solving some of this. Product gap? Is it a sort of positioning and messaging gap in the way that we sell or service you? Is it a support issue? Is it a CSM issue? It really helped us get super, super deep into the weeds of like, how are we going to solve this problem? I know that there have been some posts that I love. By the way, I love your LinkedIn posts. On the last couple of weeks of LinkedIn posts are fire. But if you're not following Danielle, go
Follow her
follow
now.
her. She's writing
Thank you.
some really great content. But you shared how you were using some of that voice of customer data on a very deep level. So what does it look like when you think about correlating some of those insights? How do you think about pulling different insights from different touch points or different, what we call channels, I guess, to be able to feed back into your strategy?
Yeah, gosh, I love a good survey. I really do. And I think listening to your customers, and in any way that you can, right? Like we talked about listening to calls earlier. I think that's a big piece, figuring out common themes and things, asking people directly. A good survey, in my opinion, only has questions that you're actually going to take action on. So that is a big one for me that I'm always like, all right, well, if we're going to build a survey after this, live training, for example, what are we going to do with it? And if we're not going to do something with that question, like we're not going to have that question at all. So really listening in that way, but also we really enjoy, I think, using our product to help drive more engagement. And that has seen such a great response and has actually helped us collect even more feedback when people are surprised that you are sending them a gift, for example. And then we're like, hey, by the way, like, what did you think about this course? We would love to get your insight on this certification program or, the resources at Sendoso overall. And I think those have been such great moments for us. We're also collecting feedback in our live webinars, which I think is a really kind of fun way. We're starting to almost build a little bit of community in there. We have a monthly Sendoso stand-up for our admins, and it's filled with like inspiration and product features and success stories and campaigns that they could be doing. And the chat just blows up, and it's seeing the social learning happening is a really cool experience that kind of happened organically, but we get a lot of feedback out of that too. What are people liking? What are they not liking? What kinds of education resources are they engaging with? And then at the end, we do have a fun like wheel of names. So everyone who attends, we do a spin. And then whoever gets chosen gets a fun gift from our vendor of the month. So we try to have fun with it. But being a gifting company, I think, gives us that ability to really use our own product and kind of have fun with the things we do to help get that feedback and keep people engaged along the way.
And that social element, there's something in there when someone asks you like, oh, can you give me feedback? It's almost like people they shut down a little bit. They're like, oh, like I either don't want to hurt your feelings or I don't think it's really feedback. But when you create that environment where they're just talking, you can actually take what you need from it. And it's amazing how much of it is truly feedback. Like, what's giving you energy when you use this? What's not? That was like one of my favorite questions to ask our learners and even like my team of like, what are you feeling after this? Like, are you frustrated? You logged out of the product. Like, what happened? Did you go upstairs and you're like, I got to go take a walk around the block because you're annoyed? Or, what is that? Because that's where the emotion comes in, where we can actually get the value to make real change, either in the product, the service, the experience, and the gifting. One of the best campaigns we ever ran, we wanted to increase G2 crowd ratings for HubSpot Academy or something like years and years ago, pre-COVID. And we sent t-shirts to people with our little we had a funny little logo, a little mascot years ago. It was a penguin. Don't ask me why it was a penguin. That has nothing to do with learning. But it was a penguin and had a little graduation cap, and we sent this to people. The number of folks who reached out after that. Now, granted, we couldn't send them internationally because I couldn't figure out how to pay customs, so I needed Sendoso.
There we go.
At the time. You were saying that, and I was like, oh gosh, I have to mention that I couldn't send things internationally. But it's something small, and it gives people that spark of joy, particularly now in a hybrid worlds, there's nothing more exciting than when something shows up at your door and it's like physical and you're like, oh, I'm going to wear this shirt, or I'm going to use this cup, or I'm going to do this. And I love that you connect your admins too, that there's so much power in that.
Yeah. And I think we're so digital, right? The amount of emails we get, or even like LinkedIn DMs, or all of these different things, having a physical package arrive cuts through that digital noise. And it's so powerful in creating relationships, which I think is important across all businesses, truly. And the fact that we get to do gifting as part of our learning programs and run these almost marketing campaigns, really,
Yeah.
is really powerful. And that was one of the LinkedIn posts maybe that you were referring to, Sam. We had a Sip Your Way to Success campaign last January, and it was kicking off the year as like, all right, holidays are over, everyone's coming in fresh, it's a great time to learn. And we really focused on specific cohorts of learners. So people who had logged into our university but had never taken a certification, people who started a certification but didn't finish it, and then people who were just new to Sendoso in the last quarter. And we did a really fun coffee themed gifting campaign and actually got 57 certifications completed in the month of January, which might not seem like too much, but when you compare it to all of the previous year, we had 58 certifications the previous year. In one month,
Amazing.
isn't that crazy? 1 month we got just by focusing on these people who wanted to learn, they wanted to get in there, and they had great feedback on the program also. So kind of that full VOC motion, right? We got them in, we got them learning, we sent a surprise gift, that went over really well, and then they gave us feedback on the actual certification. So that was such a foundation for us to start building more of those product certification milestones. And after incorporating it more into onboarding and incorporating it more into different gifting campaigns, we did something for National Learning Day. You can really kind of have fun with it. But now we were able to actually look back at the 2 years of data that we have and be able to tie these admins who are certified and that effort that they put in, those accounts spend more than accounts without a certified admin, which was such a great moment for us to be able to achieve that connection to business metrics. And honestly, it has truly fueled my planning for the next fiscal year. We want to drive even more. I think we're at 9.5% of accounts have a certified admin. We want to get to 50 by the end of the next fiscal year. So it's a long process, right? To build these programs, to get people to take them, to collect the data, and then to tie it back to your business outcomes. But it is so powerful when it all comes together, and very, very exciting. And I'm so happy to be able to share that with your audience.
And that's what, I want to draw a circle around everything you just said for everyone, that's it. Because you touched on two things that I feel like are so important. It does take time. This does not happen over a day, a week, a month. And I think that can be challenging for folks of I just want to show that when I have a certified admin, they have better customer dollar retention. They have better revenue retention. It's right. But you have to start tracking those metrics now because you need the delta. You need to be able to show that separation of these folks that are certified or using the product or using learning, whatever it may be. And here are the ones who are not. And here's the biggest difference. And you can't do that unless you start tracking it today. So if you're listening, you're not tracking it, I challenge you. Today's the day. Danielle told you, because this is built over years to be able to show that value. And the second piece, it makes sense, right? If you have someone who's engaging with learning, and yeah, there's people out there, they're oh, well, people who engage with learning are just more likely to use a product because they're self-starters. I'm sure, okay. But people who engage with understanding how things work are going to see more value. People who are able to have a further connection with your business, because that's the other bridge that's built with the certification is you've given them something they feel proud of. Yes. And what do we do when we feel proud? We feel excited. We feel enthusiastic. We post on LinkedIn. We tell a friend. And when your business name is wrapped up into that excitement, that's where the magic happens, that when you have the data to back it up, those are really easy conversations to have with leaders where you're hey, if you invested more in learning, whether internally or externally, this is the value you're going to get. And oh, by the way, people are going to be really excited about it.
Yeah, it helps to build an insane amount of brand affinity. I think this is something that is often overlooked by customer education teams is the long-term demand creation that is possible when you run these programs and you focus on certs, to your point, but in addition, role-based training, stuff that extends beyond just the product and teaches them concepts that are going to help them grow in their careers. If you do that really early on, I know, Courtney, you've had examples from HubSpot where HubSpot Academy partnered with universities, colleges, etc. Shopify did the same thing. There's just so much potential in that because they may not be buyers now, but they're going to be buyers at some point over the course of their career. And you will be top of mind, right? Your platform will be the first thing that they think of when they need a gifting solution, when they need a CRM, when they need an e-commerce tool. Like, it seems like a no-brainer, but it's something that's so often overlooked, I find, amongst educators, because we're so focused on the learning that we forget that actually learning stretches so far beyond just the moment, the thing that we're trying to translate for them and educate them on. It's like, it's so much more than that. There's so much potential in these programs. And Danielle, what you've shared is just such a beautiful example of that.
Thank you.
Dare I
And gosh,
say it's the gift that keeps on giving?
I think I love it.
I had
Done.
to bring that in there. Like, we're talking about gift giving. It was right there.
So good.
I love that.
Oh, so good.
That's the laugh break that I think we all needed.
We all needed.
It's so good.
Listeners
The gift
included,
that keeps
like
giving.
learning. Is that your new hashtag for your university? Like, that just feels like,
I mean, unless
It's
you
too
just
good.
copywrote it, like I'm taking
No.
it.
You should probably take that. She's a marketing genius. You should
Yeah,
definitely
that's
steal that.
taking my notes.
I feel like we've touched on so many things from like the metrics and the learning, and we've touched on it briefly on how you are using AI, but that is so much of how we're looking ahead of like where things are going, AI, social learning, what's going to be important. And I feel like the three of us have had this conversation of like AI is not replacing humans. We've known that. You've been vocal on that on LinkedIn. I hate that language of like AI is gonna take this down or remove this, and
Steal our jobs.
Yeah.
we
New is
we-
scary.
Yeah, exactly. Can you touch a little bit more on like what it's actually doing for your learning teams, enablement? I know that's still, in the works and new, customer education for yourself personally as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. AI, we've been really encouraged to lean into AI, which I feel like is kind of trendy right now across corporate world, but leaning in a way where identifying the manual tasks, the things that are just super repetitive or also aspirational, right? Things that we would like to be able to do that maybe we don't have the skills or the bandwidth or the team time to be able to do. So we're leaning into AI to really replace some of that manual work, free up time, things like that. We're using a video creation tool, for example, that we're instead of, a video recording that you would normally do with the screen recording, we're actually tagging in our product. So when there's an update, you click re-render, the AI reproduces it, and there you go. So the amount of time savings, but also that skill set that it normally takes to be a video producer, now my whole team can do it. So that really opens us up for, one, I love cross training, right? I love for people to be able to take PTO and someone else can step in and, nothing is falling apart. You come back a little bit more calm and relaxed, knowing that people actually understand how to do all of these things for you while you're gone. But anyway, so the AI in that way, saving time, repetitive tasks, stretching what is capable and possible with the team. But then I also think the strategic side of things is so important. So when all of those manual tasks are taken care of, we can be more strategic, and that whole validation piece with whatever the AI produces, right? How can we take that and make sure across our stakeholders have more time to talk to people and get to really understand what they're needing or wanting to see out of an education program? And then a little bit of the aspirational side, I am not a data scientist. I am not, I have access to data and I can put stuff together and I can be really scrappy. But when it comes to some of these analyses, I do not have the background to do that. I do not know how to do that. And I think previously that has stopped me from going a step further and being able to tie my education programs to business outcomes. but being very thoughtful, right? Like having a clean data set and removing customer names. Again, just I'm overly cautious, I think, when I use AI, but being able to take that, put it in and say, here are the things that I want to be able to see. What are the correlations? And that is something that I did recently where I could see that connection between certified admins and spend, which is our adoption metric. I wouldn't have been able to do that analysis without the AI piece. So I think we can be really smart about how we're using it. And I don't ever think it's going to replace that human connection, as you mentioned earlier. People want to be in person. There are more and more conferences happening in person, more events locally. And the energy there is really, really strong. So even customers, we've had customers say, oh, where's your community? Or, how can I get in touch with other customers? Like people want that human connection still. So I don't think AI is ever going to replace that. I think it's just going to give us more opportunity to make the human connections.
It is so incredibly well said. And I love what you shared about the unlock that it's given you around data visibility, because I think that's an often overlooked area with AI. I think particularly for customer ed professionals, the focus has been largely on the initial points that you raised, right? The efficiencies, like removing redundant or repetitive tasks, making it easier for the team to move a little bit faster. That's all great and wonderful, but I think that's just scratching the surface of what AI is actually capable of. So having you be able to do some of that data analysis yourself, getting that unlocked so that you can do some of that yourself, I love, because I think most teams struggle with the data analysis side of things. Like, unless you have a data scientist, if you're fortunate enough to have a data scientist on your team, and I have both been fortunate in that regard, that is not the reality of most customer ed teams. So being able to do that yourself moves us away from this perpetual proving the impact conversation that we keep having, right? Of like, I ran these programs, now my leader is expecting me to show that I moved the needle on some KPI, so I'm going to backwards design some sort of correlations after I ran the programs for 6 months and see what happened. And it sounds like what you're saying is, I'm gonna actually track some of these leading indicators much earlier on in the process and show that we're trending in the right direction. So instead of proving impact afterwards, you are now able, through the use of AI, to show continuous impact and trending in the right direction towards those business outcomes that you know are possible.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know not every team is going to have access to these data points necessarily. So my advice would be just to start with something you can control. One of the metrics that I started with was CX time saved. So when a customer would reach for a digital resource or scaled program, instead of submitting a support ticket, instead of scheduling a call with their CSM, instead of getting on the phone with their onboarder, we looked at the programs that we have and tied value to them, basically time value. So if an account is attending our webinar, they're getting all that information they would get in a cadence call. That's a 30-minute at least. But we're very conservative, right? I'm a very conservative estimate kind of person. So we took the 30 minutes and we said, all right, every account that attends our webinar, that's 30 minutes of time saved for that one initiative. And we do that with course completions. We do that with our in-app onboarding. We do that with case deflection in our chatbot. So all of those programs that make up my customer education team, we have figured out what saves people time internally. And that was where we started. That was easier to measure. And eventually, right, we got to this fantastic outcome with our admin certifications and spend and adoption. But that was not where we started at all. So yeah, I would advise or encourage folks to think about what can you find? What is the data available? And how does that impact either internal teams or external, right? Customers as well. But maybe start with that internal time saved, because that was a really big unlock for us. And that was like our launching point, I would say, into what other business metrics could we impact and help move forward.
Yeah, that little just building some of the momentum. We talked so much about that, of how do you build momentum, reduce some of those friction points for yourself, for teams, and for those who are trying to understand your impact. And AI, to me, one of the things with customer education that is bubbling to the surface too is it is actually well positioned to manage through the shift in marketing and SEO. SEO is being very much impacted. I won't say it's dying, but like it's impacted by all the different ways now agentic search is happening. And learning and your learning content is actually well positioned to speak to those new agentic search optimization sort of spaces, which I would say in the next 6 months, for people who weren't doing customer education, they're going to need to start doing it, because I'm sorry, ChatGPT wants to learn and absorb so it can teach somebody else something in those conversations. It's not going to crawl your website in the same way that we've seen with SEO and rank it on Google. We've already started to see that shift. And I like being able to kind of look at that mirrored door for us of like, how are you going to use it to be able to show the impact with what you were just talking about? And how can we start to feed it the other way, where it's like, well, I want to be found online now that ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini are sort of owning that space. Great. Well, you're actually speaking the language it already wants to speak with some of your learning content. Start to convert that so it shows up there. That is my soapbox of, I believe customer education is the unlock for AEO. I will not back down on that. And I think you're starting to like show people too of there's so many different use cases. Don't get caught up just in the, oh yeah, I can help with video production, or oh yeah, I can help reduce content development times. Like start to think about all the different pieces that need to come together, and it will be there to help you, which I love. That is the humanity coming together with the tools of today to make us all better learners, better leaders, better customer success professionals.
I have one last question, and it's maybe less focused on the CX and more about your leadership approach, because you sort of touched on this in some of the things that you've already shared, right? With AI, everything's shifting more towards digital AI. There's obviously a need for us to also bring back the humanity, especially in leadership. It's hard to be a leader at this moment in time. I don't know about you guys, but man, the changes that we've seen over the last few years, particularly in tech, which is obviously the space that we operate in, it's been difficult. And so I'm curious to hear from your perspective, what are some of those top challenges that you've faced as a leader, as you've scaled your own, grown your own career? And what are some of the ways that you, not cope, but like, what are some of the things that you do for yourself to be able to continue having that growth trajectory in your career?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I very much feel like a mama bear sometimes. So thinking about just a few short years ago when, especially in tech, layoffs were rampant. It was so frequent. It was really hard, I think, emotionally to keep up with all of that. So one of my biggest priorities, especially that was around the time I joined Sendoso, was to make sure my team was safe and that our value was known. So all of these metrics I've talked about, right? Like time saved specifically, that was kind of a focus area, but also making sure our programs had internal visibility and that people knew what we did. That was just as much for my team as it was for my own peace of mind. So I think there's a level of awareness and internal campaigning that needs to happen so people actually understand all of the things that education does and touches and the potential that it has. But I also, we're not going to be at these companies forever. So a big part of how I lead is I really like to focus on the professional development side of things for my team members, getting to speak with them more than just once a year at a review cycle. I was doing it monthly, and then that was too much. So now we're doing it quarterly, but we're doing quarterly check-ins on the professional development goals and the things they want to do that really are outside of Sendoso. I want to make sure they're growing because I know this isn't their last stop. That's something that's really, I think, communicated from leadership as well, is that we're all people. We all want to advance in our careers. So being able to help coach and guide my team on different opportunities or things that they could do or getting different connections, that has been really powerful and impactful too. So I absolutely love doing that. But sometimes it even leads into like, well, what are the things you want to be doing? What are you passionate about? What brings you joy? Because we do work for so much of the day, so much of the year, so much of our life. It should be enjoyable, at least some of it. Not everything's going to be fun, but like the majority of the time, I think you should actually really love what you do. So I try to build those things into our strategy. Things that my team are like, I would really love to explore this thing. I'm like, great, let's build it into our planning, our OKRs, our annual plan, whatever it looks like. But being, I think, a remote workforce can also bring different challenges on how do you keep everyone feeling like a team and together. And that's something that's on my mind as a leader. But again, the gifting space is really fun. I would love to do some virtual events. We've done book clubs, different kind of little events and things here and there. Just little ways to feel connected. Gosh, I literally just came from my team meeting. So if they're listening, they'll think this is really fun. But we do a section called 5 to 9, where it's outside of your 9 to 5. Who are you? What are you doing? Tell us about you as a person. Like, let's get to know you as a human. And that's actually something that came from one of the awesome gifting companies that we had brought on to Sendoso a couple years ago. And that was a big thing for them was, what's your 5 to 9? Like, we know who you are in your 9 to 5. What about this outside time? So we share pictures. We have a little slide deck that we go through. Everyone gets a slide and they post pictures of like what they've done in the last week, the weekend, and just learn about people. From like one of my team members is a runner. So we get like the little map of her run, or gosh, we have cats and dogs, and it's a whole family of pets on our team. So we get to see these things that you might not get to know about somebody otherwise. So I think building space for human connection is so important in leadership.
And it's important for yourself as well as you're talking to your teams, because I feel like there's some friction sometimes with team members. Like, I don't really want to share like personal things about myself, or like, like work is work. And I'm like, sure, you don't need to come in and tell me everything that happened in your weekend, but share some of what also gets you motivated, gets you excited. And so to me, just even those little things, like I went for a run, amazing. I don't need to know everything about it. I don't need to know how you were sweating, whatever. I don't need to know what you wore. Being able to have a little bit of that humanity of, we are not AI robots. I'm sorry, but when you leave this Zoom meeting, when you leave this workspace, something else is happening. And if you don't show that to me, it can be very hard to give you feedback, understand how you like to communicate. Like, we are humans, and in a pre-COVID world, you understood that because you saw it in the office. And I love that you're bringing that in now to the virtual hybrid space, because you can see it when you have events. Like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I had no idea how tall you were. And it's like, yeah, like you only see this in one.
Okay. On that
Or
note,
in Sam's case, I didn't realize how not tall you were.
it's like always the first thing that someone says when they meet me is like, wow, you're way shorter than I expected. I'm like, what? Do I
You
look
give
tall
tall
on video?
girl energy. It's a compliment.
Come on now.
All right, before we wrap up, Sam got her last question in. I want to get my last question in. Just simple. What is one thing you wish more education leaders would do?
Okay, one thing they could do, dive into the data. Truly, like, don't be afraid. Get what you can and get as creative as you can with it. I think some of the cool tips we had about AI here are relevant, but just get in there and use it as a starting point. Progress over perfection. It doesn't have to be amazing right away, but just start, because I think that's what really opens up a lot of doors internally and externally for us as education leaders.
I love that.
So good. Danielle, thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your expertise with our audience. We truly, truly appreciate it. This has been super fun.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
truly a gift to us and our listeners.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
Danielle's like, Courtney's not going to be invited back on her own podcast.
I love it. No, these are like, it's like the real moments, right? Like, none of this is scripted. Like, this is just, it's literally a great conversation, and so many cool intersections for gifting. There you go. Human connection.
There you go. Bringing it all together. Well, thank you so much for coming on CX Signals. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure there's many conversations that we will have in the future.
Thank you so much, ladies.